evening and welcome to Resolutions for Recovery. This show is dedicated to the empowerment and education of substance use disorder. So whether it be, your family member that's struggling and you and your spouse and your other children need help, whoever that may be, it is a family disease and we all need to heal from the disease. And tonight we are so lucky to have Karen Reese, who is an international CASAC, Certified Alcohol and Substance Abuse.
Certified clinical interventionist.
Certified clinical, and this really intrigues me, certified prevention relapse specialist.
Right, relapse prevention specialist.
Yeah, I love that part. And the reason why I love that part is I think many people expect perfection from someone on a journey to recovery. So relapse is not the end of a recovery. It's just a little hiccup in your step. And hopefully you've got a deep toolbox that person can go to and, get themselves
turned
It's not
around.
how many times you fall down, it's how many times you get back up.
That's right.
That's, my son was a wrestler, so that's an old, not how many times you get knocked down, it's how many times you get back up. So that, and I think that people, like I said, families expect perfection. You went away, now you should be okay.
Right.
And that's really not,
Realistic.
yeah, it's not realistic.
Yeah, because it's a process. Recovery is a process.
And, I know that we just spoke about this. So you have over 30 years in recovery.
Yes, I
so what a
do.
strong, powerful example you are. And
Thank you.
what worked for you may not work for
That's
somebody
right.
that's watching the show. And that's okay, because we're all different and we're all going to get to where we need to go on our own path.
Right.
So talk to me a little bit about your process,
Sure.
where you meet families, and where you will take them from there.
Well, when I meet families, they're usually quite desperate.
Yeah, in crisis.
They are in crisis. They've become quite sick themselves from worry and thinking that they might be able to control this situation that's so out of control for them. It's very sad.
Yeah.
So that's usually where I meet families when clients first come into treatment, or if I'm working with the family to do an intervention. The families feel very desperate and very stressed out. So I work with them to focus on a message of recovery.
I love that.
Yeah, they have to, come together. So I try to invite as many family members as possible
And
to
it
the
could
table.
be the family's recovery.
Absolutely.
Their loved one may never, and that's the reality of the disease.
Well, the addicted individual wants to be connected, even though they don't act like they want to be connected to family. They really do in their heart of hearts. So when we can get the family healthier,
Yes.
the addicted individual can join a healthier system and are more likely to get the help they need.
Because their manipulation also comes to an end when the family unit
Correct.
is healthier.
Right. Well, and the chaos
Yeah.
is creating, a milieu in which the addicted individual stays sick.
Yes.
So when we get the family healthy or healthier, again, that can bring the addicted individual back into health.
Yes.
There's many paths, many paths.
And it's also a great, I think from a treatment facility point of view, if someone had said to me, Linda, we want you involved in every single step of Thomas's treatment and recovery and everything. We need you here 4 nights a week. I would have been there 5 nights a week.
Oh, sure.
But everybody just said, go home, relax.
Right. You would have turned yourself inside out. If they said, Linda, if you turn yourself inside out, you can save your son.
Exactly. But that was never described. But in that one sentence, and my willingness to say, yes, I'll be here, I'll do whatever it's going to take to help whoever that family member may be.
Right.
Doesn't always have to be the child. Then from a treatment point of view, we're going to have a healthy place for the patient to come home to.
Correct.
It's going to be a better environment for them to be. Or if I say, Well, it's not my problem. I'm not coming here. That's his problem, her problem. Then I also know from a, treatment point of view, I can't send my patient back to that home. It's not going to be a safe environment for them. That just transcends, it just sends a lot about where the family is at.
Correct. So one of the messages I give to family members is let the addicted individual get their help from the peer support that they're going to receive,
Yes.
as well as the professionals. That those two aspects, community-based support and good counseling, because that's not something you can provide. That's not your role. Your role is to learn how to take care of yourself and get your family
Yes.
back on track, get your family back into a structure so that they're coming back to a healthier environment instead of the chaos that they left.
Yes, because they do
Yeah.
know how to push every button imaginable. Mom, dad, sisters, and brothers. They
And
just,
then and the family ends up fighting, and because they don't agree on the right approach,
correct.
a professional guiding them can help them get on the same page and understand what is really empowering recovery as opposed to enabling addiction.
Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely. And that's such a fine line between enabling and what you think you're doing to help your loved one,
Correct.
because they often coincide a little,
Well, I think
They
what family
mesh.
members don't really understand when they're enabling is they're doing that to give themselves a sense of
Yes.
relief. They're solving the crisis in the moment because they feel like they can exhale. But the reality is it keeps the addiction going, oftentimes, because by saving or rescuing or doing something for the addicted person they could be doing for themselves, they're not experiencing the consequences of their behavior, and so the addiction lives on another
Yes.
day.
So true.
Yeah.
And I deal with family members every day, and they'll call and they'll say, "Can you please help us get, into treatment?" I go, "Well, please have them call me. You have my cell phone number." "Well, they don't feel well. They don't." I go, "But I can't talk to you. I want to talk to them. What's their willingness?" Because I've learned that too. You can jump through 17 hoops and then say to the patient, "Come on, we're going." "Well, I'm not going there."
Well, that's where, a
Yeah.
professional intervention can also be helpful,
Yes.
because what you're doing then is you're trying to figure out what can get that individual ready to say yes.
Yes.
What can get that person to be willing? Because on their own, it takes a jumble of crises and sometimes tragedies before they may wake up.
Yes.
Family members working together can help motivate their loved one to say yes to treatment in a professional, organized intervention that
So-
may raise the bottom.
In today's world, I know that you're familiar with the patient brokering and interventionists who say they're interventionists that are not, and doing a tremendous amount of damage and causing financial hardship for families. So you are a certified interventionist. So tell me a little bit about what that means exactly.
Sure. I'll be honest with you, I'm not as familiar with the people who are not doing the right thing, because my colleagues are doing the right thing.
Yeah.
So the people that I work with and the people that I know in the field, the certified clinical interventionists, are doing the right thing, which is working for the family,
Yes.
helping the family. They're not connected to a treatment center. There's no kickbacks in an ethical intervention. The focus is the family, helping the family to get healthy, working with the family even after the person goes into treatment, continuing to work with that family to get them to provide a better home, a healthier home environment should the individual be coming back to that home environment. So there's very good training available for people who want to go into the intervention field. And it's, again, the people that I've worked with are very ethical in the way they approach this level of care.
And how would you go about, so if someone's watching right now, first, we could certainly, if we get any messages, and I will sure to provide your information.
Sure.
But
Of course.
if I'm home
Yes.
and I want to look up something,
Okay.
is it a certified interventionist that I would Google?
Yeah.
Because now that's how we find our
Yes.
things, right?
There's an Association of Intervention Specialists.
Excellent.
That's a website that one can, search. one can Google interventionist, but look for the person to be certified, look that they have clinical skills, and look at their background. They should be able to tell you what their experience is.
Yes.
And you want to make sure that they're not working for a treatment center. They shouldn't be working for a treatment center, or if they are, they should be very clear that they are, and that their intention is to get your loved one into their treatment center. That's not what I do. I visit treatment centers throughout the country to see who specializes in what, who can handle the dual diagnosis,
And
who
that's
can
such
handle
a big,
the young.
that's a huge thing.
Right. And who works with the elderly? Who works with the eating disordered? Who works with, somebody who might want an outdoor, like equine experience or an outward bound type of experience?
Meet them where they are.
Exactly. Or if there's a sex addiction involved or other gambling, there's many different forms of addiction. You want to know where to send the individual, what's the best treatment center, and what can their insurance pay for? You work with that family. I try to keep people in network,
Yes.
with their insurance, so they don't have a lot of out-of-pocket
And do you
costs.
feel, certainly, so you do work for Seafield, and you are the family coordinator there.
Family program director.
So, and I know I'm on the board of directors for St. Joe's up in Saranac Lake.
Oh, you are? I didn't know
And
that.
they have such a
Good to know.
strong family program
Oh,
there,
they do?
too.
Wonderful.
Oh, yes. So, my question to you is, when we send people out of state, then we kind of lose that opportunity for the family involvement because they're...
Well, it depends on whether the family has the resources to go to
Yes.
their family program. So we do look, so that's all discussed in advance.
Okay.
If they cannot travel out of state, I use Florida, Connecticut, different states, So sometimes it's a matter of a few hours drive to Connecticut for the weekend family
Yes.
program.
Yes.
Some families can take a trip down to Florida for their weekend family program. It depends on where the individual is going.
Okay.
So
I
we
guess
really
you could always FaceTime, too.
Yes, they will. I mean, ideally, it should
Ideally,
be in
it
person.
should be in person.
Yeah, so all that's discussed in advance. What are the resources? What are the possibilities? So where do we need to place this individual?
Because there's so many, as the affected person comes out of their fog, sort of say, there's a lot of damage that's been done.
Yes.
So
Yes. And one of the biggest causes of relapse is the shame and the guilt and the remorse that they experience when they come out of that fog. So we really want to work with that individual to work through those feelings so that they don't continue to beat themselves up. There has to be forgiveness. We have to stop the shame and blame.
And if there isn't forgiveness for whatever that reason, for that moment, that doesn't mean that it never will be. But that's also called disappointment for the affected person who has to learn now to cope with life's disappointments.
Well, they have to start with themselves.
Yes.
So before they do their 8th step, as we do in the 12-step programs, and make amends to family members, they really need to start with themselves, because you're absolutely right. They may not have family that are available to forgive.
Correct.
In which case they have to, they have to work on forgiving themselves so they can have the life that they want.
Yes, and the life that they deserve.
Yes, absolutely.
And that doesn't mean, even with my own son, talk, I'm sorry, and that, but it was actions. It was actions that I wanted to see.
That's right.
So, when you are estranged then, as so many families can become,
Yes. Yes.
when they see that person who has forgiven themselves and moving forward and living a productive life, on a good path, on a healthy path,
Right.
then that forgiveness may come one day.
Absolutely. When the families come into the treatment center at Seafield and they're there seeing their loved one for the first time in maybe a week or two, the loved one is very quick to say, I'm sorry, and they've heard that before.
Yes.
So what I say to them is, you can hear that, you can do with it what you will, but you are going to watch for change in behavior, because the words don't mean anything, and rightly so. The
And
words
rightly
do not
so.
mean anything to you at this point, and I validate them. I validate the trauma they've been experiencing.
Yes.
I validate their anger, their sadness, their fear, and just give them the support they need, of course, introducing them to their own support systems.
Yes. So,
so
Families
critical.
Anonymous,
Al-Anon,
Al-Anon,
Naranon.
Naranon. And, I encourage people to also do that. But if one group doesn't work for you, you have to keep searching out groups.
That's right.
Because you will find your peeps.
Right. Well, we ask the addicted individuals, did you go to your AA meeting? Why not? Did you go to your NA meeting? Well, they're going to have the same excuses. Well, the people there weren't very friendly, or I didn't like this, or I didn't like that. We'll try another meeting. So we're expecting them to try meetings until they find one they like. Let's be a power of example. Let's work together. As a whole family, we can all be in recovery. There's programs for everybody.
There's programs for everyone.
Yeah.
Siblings. I know that
Absolutely.
siblings have voices that often go
They're
unheard.
usually the angry ones. They're so
Oh,
angry.
they're so angry. So
Because
angry.
they've watched the enabling of their parents, and they've watched the resources get taken away.
Yes. Drained.
Drained from themselves, from their
And
parents.
attention.
Well, that's it.
Yep.
Because they don't have the problems, and so the parents, oh, they're fine. No, they're not.
No, they're not fine. No, they're not fine.
Right.
So, if they are doing good behavior, and
right.
I've worked with so many kids and,
Yeah. Yeah. They're
doing great
suffering
in
too.
school,
Right.
doing awesome in sports,
Correct.
but nobody shows up for them.
That's right.
So I might as well do the bad behavior because
Mm.
that seems to get my parents' attention. And that's the last thing we
Or
want
they
to
end
happen.
up with other stress-related illnesses. Because they're trying to be so good so they don't upset their parents, because they know that their siblings upsetting their parents.
Yeah.
So they keep everything inside, and when I do an intervention, they're often the most angry individual, and they know. They've been aware of the addiction for longer. The parents didn't want to see. They had their
Correct.
blinders on. They were in denial, but the siblings often know.
They do often know. They do. And it's such a horrific place for a sibling to be in.
It is.
Because they don't want to tattle.
It's horrific for everyone who loves
yes.
the addicted individual. Horrific.
Yeah.
It is. Heartbreaking.
And, but there's plenty of, Alateen.
Yes.
There's plenty of programs, but it's the kids that need to go to their own therapist and really work out their things. Because that's, as we were talking before, so very often underlying any addiction is some sort of trauma
Absolutely.
or co-occurring
Yes.
diagnosis.
Yes. Unresolved grief is huge. People just it's like trauma on top of trauma, life experiences that haven't been processed appropriately, that they learn to self-medicate at a young age, even through behaviors before they find medications. So yes, that's how people can set themselves up for addiction.
I know, speaking with other counselors and different things, so very often with the young women, that it is some kind of sexual
Yes.
trauma that happened to them.
Well, now with the whole Me Too movement,
Yeah.
it's coming to light that most of us have experienced some forms of even sexual harassment at the least. Most
Yes.
of us as women, right? We know that. Okay. It goes much deeper, much, much deeper for women who come into substance abuse treatment. There often is a sexual abuse component there. Very sad. And it wasn't acknowledged. They couldn't tell, and
Right.
they've carried it with them. Oftentimes they've...
And what a dirty secret,
Yeah.
and as
Sure, the
small
shame.
children, 4, 5, 6 years old,
Right.
I'm going to, hurt your family, or I'm going to do this, or I'm going to, if you tell, then this is going to happen. What a horrible
burden. It is a terrible burden to carry. But when we have women together in treatment, and I really strongly believe in gender-specific treatment,
Absolutely.
then you can provide groups that provide that safety. And we have a group. Well, I've worked at different facilities where we call it Seeking Safety, and it's based on some work by some specialists in the field, where they really get to work on their trauma and they support each other, and they're safe because they're women only.
Yes.
Working together. So gender-specific treatment is so critical for that reason.
And men also
Oh,
have their
absolutely.
own experiences
do.
that they don't feel comfortable discussing in front
Even
of
more
women.
so. Oh,
and they
absolutely.
shouldn't. And that's okay.
Yeah, even amongst themselves, because they feel like it makes them less of a man somehow if they were sexually abused as a child. So yes, we see it all the time, all the time.
Crazy. It's just,
Yeah.
I wish
pervasive.
there was a magic pill that everyone, well, that's a
That's
poor
what they wish
statement.
too.
Yeah. But we were talking before this horrific shooting in Florida.
Yeah.
That is just, it's overwhelming at this point.
It is.
And what is the issue? You know, you really, there is no magic pill for life. It's called experience, it's called human connection on
Right.
so many levels.
We're not teaching our children how to cope,
How to cope
you know.
with disappointments.
Right.
Not everybody wins. So I've never been a big fan of everyone gets a trophy. No, not everyone gets a trophy because not everyone wins.
Learning how to deal with disappointment, sure.
Yeah, and that
processing
shouldn't
it.
be a disappointment.
Right, well,
Hey,
yeah.
you know what? You came in second, but you beat out so many other teams. That's awesome. How? What are you going to do to prepare yourself to be number one next year? That's how you encourage. We're not keeping score because that wouldn't be fair, and everybody wins. No, that's not realistic because life is going to knock you down.
Right. And we talk to, you know, the addicted individuals about life on life's terms, and I don't sugarcoat anything for them, nor the families, which is that you are going to be facing stressors when you leave this treatment program, for example.
Yes.
Many stressors.
Even getting up and getting your own breakfast may be a stressor because
Sure.
everything is
Right.
taken care of.
Well, and yes, so we hope that they integrate the structure that they learn, getting up, getting dressed, eating, doing the daily chores of living that they
Yes.
really haven't done. The whole point of an inpatient level of care, residential care, is that they integrate that structure and take
Yes.
it with them when they leave. But that's a big task.
It's a big task.
It's a big task, and when they go back into home environments sometimes that aren't properly prepared, they go right back into old habits. So we
Yes.
see that all the time. That's why we recommend sober housing, where they're supporting that structure, the maintaining of that structure, and the accountability that so many of them need, because 28 days really isn't enough.
It isn't enough. And I love that, we need to do those wraparound services a lot differently and do the transitional housing. And I think that if we invested in that infrastructure,
Right.
what would recovery look like? What would I believe
We
that
need
the
more.
relapse rate would certainly be what it is because
Would go down.
you leave a treatment facility and the counselors there are busy, all with new patients. Who's paying attention to the one that just left?
Well, hopefully they're going to outpatient.
Yes, hopefully.
Not
but
all take that suggestion,
you
but
know,
that's where they're
yeah.
going to get the continued professional help. You don't go from 24/7 care to nothing. They must go to the intensive outpatient. I recommend it to everybody. It's the standard, but they're a free will, so not everybody follows.
Correct.
Because they think they got
I'm
it.
done. I
Yeah.
got it.
Yeah.
This is my 7th facility. I know what I have to do.
I know what I have to do.
But what happened the other 6 times?
Right. Right.
Yeah,
Right.
so-
Which suggestions didn't you take? What are you willing to do the difference?
So
in this time?
we were just speaking about that. So it's funny. You can take it to any subject, diet and exercise. If you
That's
eat
right.
less calories and you burn more calories, you're going to lose weight.
Right.
But why do we think that we can reinvent that? Same thing with any kind of addiction.
True, and what works best for diets is not the diet itself, but the support. We need support. Motivation wanes over time. So everybody wants to lose weight. If you want to lose weight, it's easy to say, I want to lose weight. We know we're motivated to lose weight. So why don't we? Why aren't we more successful? Because we don't have the support in place. And the stressors come back in. So that's a perfect example. We need support going forward for our goals.
Yes.
We need to support one another.
And saying your
critical.
goals out loud and making, family meetings.
Correct.
I love that when
Yeah.
people are in recovery, when a family is in recovery, that every week we talk about what went right,
That's right.
what didn't go right.
That's
right?
structured family recovery. You're
That's
talking- yeah.
structured family recovery.
Yes, I recommend the book It Takes a Family by Deborah J. I recommend it to everybody because that's exactly what it addresses. How can the family meet weekly to discuss what went right, what do we need to work on, how was your meeting this week, because the family's attending meetings and the family's working together, and that is the best
And
formula.
do you have any kind of percentages when that happens?
Well, they go up. And I'll
They
tell
go
you
up.
how one knows this. There are programs for pilots and doctors that are much more stringent than what we have for the average population, meaning if they have to go into treatment because of the nature of their jobs, they are actually have to be in aftercare for 5 years. They're held accountable. They're monitored.
Okay.
They're tracked.
Wow.
And they have so many wraparound services because of the nature of their jobs. We don't want and they have a much lower relapse rate as a result of that type of monitoring, that type of accountability, and that type of support. We don't offer that to the general population.
And isn't that interesting? If we did,
Oh yeah, they'd be
yes.
much higher levels of success.
Of course it would be, because, I know 25 years ago, it used to be 18 months to 2 years for
Well, the old TC model, yes, those were the TC models, I believe. Now you can, right, it's hard to get 90 days anymore, which is St. Joe's, and
Yes.
it's hard to get that time anymore.
so difficult to get that time. But St. Joe's also believes in transitional housing, so they have
Right.
their step down.
That's right, yeah.
You know what's amazing about St. Joe's too? Every October, Columbus Day weekend, they do an alumni weekend.
That's important.
And there are 600 to 700
Oh, that's
families that
wonderful.
come back there, that stay in touch because of
Fantastic.
they've been woven together.
Right.
And they remember their experience there. So important to
Yes.
have that touch place.
Yes, yes.
It's could be just the thought of going back up there makes you humble and grateful for where you are today. It's all of those things that I think as humans
We need that
we
sense
need
of
more
community.
of we need that sense of community. And I think that's the biggest word that I think we have to get back into, that community.
Well, that's what I found, for myself, getting into recovery. It was all about walking through the doors of my first Narcotics Anonymous meeting and being welcomed there. I was terrified to walk through the door. I know how they feel. I know exactly. Some of them can't get out of their car and go through the parking lot because I couldn't. But when I finally did, because I was pushed and pushed, I felt welcomed there. I felt a sense of belonging, and I needed that more than anything.
Yeah.
Because prior to that, my people were the ones who were in active addiction. And that's who I thought my people were,
Yeah.
And that's where I felt I belonged. I felt I deserved no better than to be in active addiction because of my low self-esteem, etc. So finding recovery and having that sense of community wrap around me, make me feel welcomed and cared about was critical. to
That's
my
amazing.
recovery.
We're going to be right back after this message.
My age is 18 years old and my name is Evan.
My name is Sean and I'm 19 years old.
My name is Justin, I'm 16.
My name is Angelica. I'm 18 years old.
Marijuana, and I was 13 years old.
Marijuana, and my age was 13.
The first drug I ever tried was marijuana, and I was 12 years old.
It was marijuana and I was 11 years old.
Yes, and that escalated to promethazine, lean.
I began to take pills like Xanax, Percocets.
I began using other substances such as pills and alcohol.
I then went on to cocaine and pills and quickly progressed to heroin. I was 13 years old when I first started using heroin. I had aspirations of going to an Ivy League school, and that quickly, within a year or two, changed. I stopped going to my classes. I stopped going to school altogether eventually. All my friends were kind of just dropping me.
I started getting in trouble in school, eventually kicked out. I got in trouble with the law a lot.
I wasn't really hanging out with a lot of sober people, just people that use. I overdosed at 15. I've been at Outreach for 5 months. Outreach honestly really helps you. It shows that you're honestly worth something. And it's possible to become sober if you put in progress. But it's not just gonna be handed to you, you really have to want to change. Inpatient, you can't just leave. You stay here and you have to deal with it. That's what I feel like a lot of kids need.
In a long-term facility, the counselors get to know the resident better, and they get to actually work with them more than in a short-term 28-day facility. And it really gives kids a chance to work on themselves rather than being rushed through a program, just to be thrown back into life, going back into the same old bad habits that they were doing before.
Coming in here, I couldn't believe how long I would have to be here, but after a couple months, like, you know, talking to counselors, I kind of came to the realization that, like, I need a lot of time and work to repair everything I've done.
The things that we get taught here, you know, it really does help you in life, and it gives you a different perspective. It's very important for a kid to have a family involvement in treatment so they don't think they're alone in this. We communicate on a better basis than how we used to. We understand each other more, and that was from the help of outreach.
They come every Wednesday night for support group. They come to a group every other week.
They come to parent support group to discuss their problems also. My relationship honestly has got a lot better, because I remember my mom used to never want to say anything to me because she would be scared of my reaction. I'm starting to realize in here, like, I really have to take advantage of the fact that I have her still.
When I was about 14 is when my parents realized that I had several different problems, such as behavioral issues, and the behavioral issues kind of stemmed from my drug use. I began caring less about myself and others. Outreach has really made me realize how important family is. If I was out of state in a program where my parents were not involved, I would have never been able to strengthen my relationship with them. My father told me that I've inspired him to make changes in his life, and that meant a lot to me. I've never heard my dad be inspired by something before, and I was just proud that it was me.
Welcome back to Resolutions for Recovery. Resolutions for Recovery. I'm sitting here with Karen Reese, and you are just a wealth of information. So we're going to have you back on because, again, the pilots and the doctors that they are monitored for 5 years and their success rate is so high is just
Indicative of what works.
Yes, of
Yes,
what works.
correct.
Because it's the same thing, you know, my sister-in-law is a young woman, but she was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes. And the wraparound services that she gets with that disease and the follow-up care,
Including support groups, probably, right?
including nutritionalists,
Everything.
including everything.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that they're not deserving of that.
Right.
But when I equate it to that if she didn't watch her diet, didn't keep her weight, you know, and didn't take her medication correctly, they're not going to let her leave the ER in 20 minutes because it was her choice not to follow her protocol. So I equate it to someone coming in with an overdose. They're so easily treated and released because it was their choice to do what they did. But a 400-pound guy can come in with diabetes and heart disease and not follow any protocol, but they're treated.
A hierarchy of stigma.
Yes, hierarchy of stigma, which
Yeah.
is a great, you know, and it makes me very angry. So
Sure.
we're going to fight, always fighting against the shame and stigma of this disease, you know, and Seafield, of course, you know, unfortunately had to back out of that deal with St. Ursula's convent.
Right.
And what a disgusting,
Yeah.
I mean,
Reaction from the community.
from the
Well,
community
it's
who,
ignorance.
such ignorance, such ignorance.
Yes.
And in this day and age, that there shouldn't be that ignorance, that level of ignorance
Yeah.
anyway,
Yeah.
because it's
Very
such a
sad.
huge epidemic going on right now. But as you so eloquently put before, eating disorders, gambling,
Sex addiction. internet,
Internet, Facebook, social media.
gaming,
Yes, gaming.
pornography. There's many process addictions, yes.
Yes. It's not just drugs and alcohol.
Correct.
And just
They're-
because you can't stop doing something, you know, it would be so easy to lose 10 pounds or 20 pounds, you know, but I mean, I even take it to that simplicity. Because if it was so easy to do that, but your answer is, but I like cake. Yes. Well, you know, the person struggling with substance abuse likes their cake, whatever their cake
Yes.
may be.
Yes.
Whatever drug of their choice is.
Right. And if people were really honest with themselves and took a look at themselves and what they struggle with instead of pointing at the addicted individual,
Yes.
which families do, it's very easy
Yes.
to, you're the problem, you're the one who's, doing this and that. If people took a look at their own struggles, they would develop much more compassion for their addicted loved one and for others struggling with addiction, because we all have addiction issues or compulsive issues. It's a matter of degree. Really, we're a nation of addicts, whether we're taking prescription medication, we're acting out here, there, all to distract us from feeling.
Yes.
And here we are trying to get the addicted individual to stop self-medicating and feel what they need to feel, but it's not supported in our society. Feeling your feelings is not supported. We don't provide the support for
No,
that.
we don't provide the support, and we are a nation of, I want it fixed now.
That's right.
So give me something to take this away.
Right.
And you and I were speaking before when I first lost my son, which is incredible, the pain of that.
Can't imagine.
And no one should ever imagine that. And I'll always be grieving.
Oh, sure.
It's, it's not something
Correct.
that is just going to
And
resolve
I'm sure
itself.
you found people who wanted to take away your pain.
Yes.
Understandably so, but that's not the path towards healing. The path towards healing is feeling.
Yes.
It's feeling those feelings. And like I said before, unresolved grief is at the core of so much addiction, frankly, because people are running away from their pain.
Yes. It's uncomfortable.
Yeah, right.
And
That's
when,
right.
when I unfortunately have to speak to other parents that have joined my club, I tell them, don't beat yourself up. There are days that you just need to sit on the couch and cry. That's okay.
Yeah.
That's meeting yourself where you are.
That's right.
Just go through, because the longer you can sit in the uncomfortability of where you are, the faster you come out the other side.
That's right. That's right.
Just let those feelings go, and they pass. And it's almost like riding a wave.
It is. And recovering from addiction involves some mourning. I
Yeah.
tell people that. It really does.
Of course
it's
it
mourning,
does.
the loss of your best friend, whatever your drug of choice was. It's mourning the lifestyle that you were living that was so exciting. There is, and the people that you were connected with, even though, everybody was using everybody else for, the purpose of getting what they needed to get that day. The bottom line is it's a lifestyle we get into.
Yes.
And we think we want to be there for some time until we figure out we don't want to be there. And then getting out of it is difficult. And then also mourning, because we're going to lose people that we loved.
Yes.
People die from this disease all the time. And if
Yes.
you get into recovery, they say you have to step over the bodies. The reason they say that is because people continue to die even as you get well. And if you don't mourn, you can let that take you right back out.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Wow. That was a big statement. But I think that but
So
again,
we all
there's
have a
some,
lot to mourn.
We do. Compassion. Just have compassion. And I don't know. I think as a society today,
Yes.
we certainly like to beat everybody up.
Yeah, we sure do. Point the finger.
Point the finger.
Blame.
Yes. You know what? Everybody take a breath.
Instead of seeing our common humanity. And again, that's what I'm working with the clients that I'm treating, is in their relating to each other. Don't compare yourself. You're not better than, and you're not worse than. There is a lot of
Yes.
humanity there that you can relate to, that we all share. And that's what you need to find, that humility. In your vulnerability. You're
Yes.
vulnerable. You're not up here, you're not down here, because they swing between those two places.
Crazy.
Yeah,
It's crazy.
yeah.
you know, and once you start comparing,
Right.
and I know, you know, when you point one
Uh-huh.
finger, three
That's right.
come back pointing at you. So just stay, you know, instead of being, well, can you believe that they said that? Embracing them and helping them through that. Because that's the part in the 12-step fellowship, certainly, or the community of recovery, that if we all meet everyone where we are
Correct. Seek to understand.
and helping somebody up
That's right.
instead of pushing them down.
Right.
You know, women so often keep things very close to the vest. But if you're in a group with 10 women and you each share one idea, you leave the meeting with 10 ideas.
That's right.
Instead of the one that you were so afraid to share. Right?
Absolutely.
So, you know, it's the camaraderie and it's the journey.
Yes.
It's not where you're going. That's the destination. It's the journey. It truly
Correct.
is the journey.
And there's really no end to a recovery process in terms of the health that you can achieve emotionally, physically, you know, because you can stop, you know, your smoking as well as your drugs. You can start eating healthier and you can start, you know, getting into a lifestyle that's so much healthier. So you really can achieve great things when you put.
So I have an interesting
the first
question
step.
to ask you. How do you feel about, I know that there are many treatment facilities that don't let the affected person exercise
Oh.
during,
No, that's not my experience. My experience is they have to be cleared
okay,
in order to be allowed to exercise. Yes, so they have to have an EKG, that type of thing, make sure it's safe for them.
okay.
And then they're given permission, and you know, it's based on what they're capable of doing. So many facilities, including Seafield, for example, offer, you know, more gentle forms,
Yoga.
and Pilates, and you know, things of that nature. But they do have to have an EKG before they can work out in the gym or lift weights
Okay.
or that type of thing.
okay. Well, that's good to hear because
Yeah, no, they can.
yeah,
And
I
I
think
think most
it's-
facilities now have gyms or.
I think it's a great way
Recreation.
to learn how to deal with stress. Is
Absolutely.
physical activity
Absolutely.
and creating your own endorphins.
Exactly.
You
Getting
know,
those
and
chemicals
I
flowing.
use myself. I thankfully had a very strong yoga practice
Oh, good for you.
prior to my son's passing,
Ah,
and I don't
Yeah.
think I would have come through
uh-huh. Right.
because
That's a
I
good
know,
foundation.
yeah, how to go to my breath, how to settle myself down, and how to be. Those three things, our society we don't do really well
Right.
with that.
No, yoga's a great practice.
Yes, it is.
Fantastic for healing body, mind, and soul.
Yes. And that's my moving meditation. My time to think about absolutely nothing. Just the moment that I'm in.
Right. So we teach them meditation techniques as well. You know, all of that we do. Acupuncture, you know, and many places offer many things, linguistic reprogramming or neurofeedback or just a lot of
I
education.
know that's the rapid resolution therapy now to help clear out some trauma.
Yes, sure.
Yeah.
Yes, so and again, there are facilities that are more dedicated towards treating trauma that specialize
Yes.
in it. So if I'm intervening on an individual that's got that kind of history and we can get them to that particular facility, then that's what I'm going to recommend.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Otherwise, I recommend that they get into psychotherapy after, treatment, do the outpatient, do psychotherapy, do self-help. With all of that, you're really getting a lot of support.
And, I guess it's the one time in life that you really get to be selfish. And you should be selfish with your own recovery because certainly if I'm not the best person that I can be, I can't help anyone else. So even with families that I help, and because it can be, I don't allow myself to be re-traumatized. Let's
Good
put
for
it that
you.
way.
Good for you.
Because I know when to step
Yes.
out of it.
So you're
and
talking
step
about
back.
boundaries, which is
Yes,
a very important
very
topic.
healthy boundaries.
Yes. When I talk to new people coming into the field, because I've certainly trained and supervised a lot of entry-level counselors coming into the field, I talk about authenticity. I talk to them about walking the walk, which is what authenticity is. And you can't take the clients where you haven't gone. So if you cannot model self-care, you cannot talk to them about self-care if you're not taking care of yourself. And they know it and they feel it and they sense it.
Yes.
So I can be the best power of example to them if I'm taking care of myself. And I work very hard not to take all that vicarious trauma in, because I hear, sometimes it does get to me. But I typically do not take it home, because I've learned how to set internal boundaries, because I know what I can and what I don't have control over. The serenity prayer.
Yes,
really.
the serenity prayer.
Right.
And for me, quite frankly, I'm very spiritual, and I remember carrying so many young people with me. And I just, for me, it's my higher power, God, that I heard loud and clear in my own heart, my own soul. It's not your job.
Right.
You plant the seed
Right.
and let me do my job.
That's not your job.
It's not my job. It's not my place. It's not my position.
But planting the seeds is fantastic.
Absolutely.
That's what we do.
Absolutely. And being there for another
Yeah.
phone call and different things. But,
For support,
everybody has their job to do.
Right.
And if you're a mom or a dad or a sister or a brother, it's not your loved one's recovery is not your job.
Correct.
Your own recovery is your job. And I think, I can certainly sense now that when you're working with a family you do the same thing.
Absolutely.
It's
I describe to them that they have their own path.
yes.
And if they're honest with their family members, they want to find their way. They don't want to be able to manipulate their family members. That they know that's not healthy for them. They also don't want to be badgered. They really want to find their way. They want to learn from their experiences. And if the family can stay in their lane and they can stay in theirs, then they can have a parallel process.
Yes.
That's beautiful. Because they had a parallel process going down, so now let's have a parallel process getting back on
Yeah.
our feet. Family members
and it's
need-
such a difficult, especially the this crazy epidemic that has stolen so many children, just kidnapped them. And as a mom and a dad, you've always fixed everything, right?
Right.
And you took them to the doctor and they got well.
Right.
And all of those things that are innately
Correct.
what parents do.
Yes.
And this takes you against
All your
everything
instincts. Right.
that you think is the right thing to do.
Correct. Yeah.
And it breaks your heart, and it can break everything that you are if you allow it to. But when you find that camaraderie with other families walking the same walk,
Right.
and understanding that this is not unique,
Right.
that it is the process, that you find some comfort in that.
Right. Right. I think parents, especially, as you say, it's counterintuitive for them to let go. But when we're talking about adults with addiction, they really do not have any control over what
And
decisions their adult
unfortunately,
children are
even
making.
their 16-year-olds,
True.
they have no control
That's,
over.
that's true.
Because the
oftentimes.
way our the way everything works, they have more rights
Well,
that
what,
a parent can't tell them what to do.
what families can do, even with their adult children, is have rules for their home. And but
Absolutely.
there have to be consequences that they're willing to follow through with if their adult children or adolescent children do not follow their rules.
Correct.
So that's something that we also help family members with, to understand what are the boundaries they're willing to set, that they're willing to live by, that they're not going to make false threats. In other words, don't make empty threats, because you've done that before. So let's be realistic about what works for
Yes.
you, and let's get your child to agree. Let's have a communication about what's realistic. What's a time to come home, a curfew that you can both live with.
Correct.
And see if we can't get to some kind of agreement. So we can work on those kinds of things. So it doesn't have to be one person or the other just ruling the roost. Let's work together.
And the old saying was tough love. I
Yeah.
like love tough. Love tough, love enough to have those consequences,
That's
to
right.
have those boundaries. So many people said, throw them out, throw your loved one out. Well, that's count. And sometimes that may have to happen.
Some parents do.
That
but that's
doesn't
a
make
very
it good or
personal
bad.
choice. No,
It
it's a personal
just
choice.
makes it what works in your
That's right.
reality.
If a family has other children in that home
And
and they
there's-
cannot have active addiction in that home, I respect that. They can say no active addiction here. That's usually what they're saying, what they're throwing
Correct.
out is active addiction, not the person.
Not the
They're
person.
welcome
Right.
if they're in recovery, but they can't have active addiction in their home, and that is fair, in
That's
my
fair.
opinion. So, and when I ask the clients, the patients who are sitting there, you know, in a lecture, you know, is that fair? They agree that's fair when they're in the right state of mind. Of course, when they're not,
Yes.
they expect to, you know, be given money, to be fed, to be let in, warm, you know, yeah,
All the
fed and
comforts
all
of
that.
home.
Right.
For not, you know,
Yeah,
for not
not-
having the equal
Mm-hmm.
responsibility back to the rest of the family,
Right. Right.
which is very unfortunate.
Yeah, it is very unfortunate what goes on. But, you know, patients die in the street and they die in their bedrooms.
Yes.
They really do.
I think they die more often at home than
They
they do out in the street.
So, you know, and the parents think if I kick him out, he's going to die in the street. Well, either way, you're not controlling the addiction. You are not controlling that addiction.
Yeah. I think that's
Mm-hmm.
such a powerful message right there. We can never control the addiction,
Right.
period.
We didn't cause it, we can't control it, and we can't cure it.
Yes,
The 3 C's.
the 3 C's.
So we try to introduce those concepts to the parents that come and are in so much pain.
But you know, it's almost the same thing though as when you have a toddler,
Mm-hmm.
right? Don't say what you don't mean.
Yeah, exactly.
So you
it's good
just
parenting.
met my daughter tonight, and I
Yes.
will never forget that. I have 3 children, you know, under the age of within 5 years.
Okay.
And I had just, Andrew was a baby, that's the youngest. We just got to my parents' house, which was like a 40-minute drive. And my daughter is the oldest, so she was just under 5. And she was a little scotch all day. And when we got to my parents, I said, if you do that again, we're leaving. And with that, I wanted to take back those words so badly.
Uh-huh.
Because I knew what she was,
going to do it again.
and we had to leave.
Oh, you did? So you
I did.
Oh, wow.
Because
Okay.
I'm the youngest of 5, and I looked at my mother, of course, was like, I said, pack dinner, because I'm taking food home.
Wow.
But
Yeah.
if I didn't do that, what was the lesson that was going to be learned? There was
Yeah.
no lesson.
And it was learned by all your children that
It was
day.
learned by all our
Right.
children.
Yeah.
So, but that's, you know, that's, say what you mean.
I mean what you say, and you don't have to say it mean.
Correct. that I love that.
Yeah. You
But
know,
just
stop
say
the
what you
yelling,
mean and
stop the arguing, stop the pleading,
know,
stop
if-
the bribing.
If, you know, if they come in past their curfew 3 times, and then
Have
they
a
know,
calm conversation about it. And I tell them, be thoughtful about these conversations, because if you're making decisions out of anger, you're going to regret them.
yes,
You have to be thoughtful about what your limits, rules, and boundaries are going to be with your addicted loved one. And it's hard, but that's why you need the support.
and sometimes, you know, I don't know how you feel about this, but I tell people, just because they want an answer at that moment in time, doesn't mean you have to give them the answer
Absolutely. You can
at that
think
moment
about
in
it.
time.
You have the
You're
right to
allowed
think
to
about
think.
it.
You have the right to think about it, and if you don't
Great
know
advice.
what to say,
That's right. Yep.
take a moment, make some phone calls to your support group, but don't answer in
Absolutely.
haste, in anger,
Yes.
or in fear.
Yeah. That's a great message.
You know, that's so important to remember, because you know, your loved one that's addicted wants to press all those buttons, get
Yes.
you off kilter,
Yes.
so that they can bring you where you want to go, but disengage. You know, I'm so sorry. And I remember doing this with my son. I'm so sorry that you're having a bad day, that you're feeling this way. And I would go in my room and I would lock the door and I would scream silently at the door. Everything that, because he had made me so angry, but he never saw me because I couldn't, you know, it was like,
wouldn't
don't
have
let
been
him see you
helpful.
sweat.
Right, right, right.
But disengage,
Yeah.
just disengage. You know, we'll talk about this when you and I are both feeling better, and that's okay to do.
Yeah, I learned that lesson when I was the program supervisor at Morningstar for 13 years, and I would have patients come up to me with a request, and I learned that oftentimes it sounded so reasonable. Now, these were patients in early recovery, so oftentimes it was a type of manipulation, but they had such a great way of presenting it that it sounded very reasonable, and I would say yes, and then I would think, oh, darn it, I wished I had thought that through, because that wasn't the right answer. So I learned from that experience to almost instinctively say, let me think about it. Even if I thought I knew the answer, I just say, let me think about it and I'll get back to you. And that's just such a blessing right there, because then I have the moment to take and say, you know what, when I come back, now I'm giving them a thought out answer.
Yes.
Whether it's yes or no, and I can explain myself. And it wasn't an impulsive,
Well, it's
reaction.
funny with those same 3 kids, when they used to, when kids keep needling you and
Yeah.
needling you, and I'd say, if you let me think about it, I'll think about it. But if you want my answer right now, you're not going to be happy.
Right, right.
Okay, you can think about it.
That's a good way to
right?
put it, too.
But
Sure. Yeah.
Don't be afraid to take that breath.
Yeah, it's great advice for parents. Yeah. And just loved ones of addicted, spouses and siblings.
So you know what? Even when you think you're going to have, it doesn't really matter with who. Take the moment,
Sure.
because what's said in that moment can never be taken back.
Right.
So words have such power. So we just, disengage, walk away,
That's right.
suck it up, do what you got to do.
And it's a great skill to teach the patients too, who are going to be learning relapse prevention skills, is to take that same step back before
Yeah.
they make a decision on something that they may regret. Right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So it's a great skill.
Yeah. It's just, I think that societally, if that's a word, we move at such a rapid pace that that saying, you know what, I'm not sure if this is good or bad. So
That's right.
Let
It's
me
not
sleep on it.
intentional. I picture a ping pong, is pinball.
Pin,
Bouncing off, and that people are just in constant reaction, and there's no intentionality there.
Yes.
There's no stopping and thinking and being thoughtful. We're in constant reaction around addiction. Everybody's spinning.
everybody's spinning. And
So,
you just,
yeah.
if I just do this for them, they're going to stop.
Right.
They're going to be okay.
Sure.
And that's not the reality of the disease.
And if they loved me, they would stop. And if I
Yes.
love them enough, yeah. There are a lot of
And that's
myths.
all fallacies,
Yes,
really.
yes.
Because we do really, everyone needs to remember it's a brain disease.
That's right. That's
You
right.
know, and-
the brain
and-
gets hijacked.
Yes, and the brain is certainly hijacked, especially with this heroin and opiates, certainly hijacked. But I don't even want to limit it to that, because
No, because
the
alcohol
drug,
and cocaine do the same thing.
drug
They
is
really
unimportant.
do. That's
Drug is
right.
unimportant.
Yep, absolutely. They have the same impact on the same areas of the brain, frankly.
So can coffee, if
Yeah,
you know.
to a lesser
Dr.
degree,
Dewey,
but yeah.
right? You've seen his
of course.
presentation, so
He
that's
comes
very
and speaks
interesting.
to our
I know he
parents,
does.
yeah.
So
Yeah.
when you smell coffee, how you're
Lights up.
Yes, it
Part-
lights
yeah.
up. Yeah,
Yeah.
your brain
Yeah.
gets ready
Anticipation,
for the taste, for
the effect.
for the effect, for everything.
And we can all relate to loving coffee, right?
Absolutely. Or
That's one of my,
cake, or
Yeah.
ice cream,
Sure.
or a really good steak dinner. It's just take a step back on that. So you know what? We have under 2 minutes.
Okay.
So I want everyone in the audience to know that you can really help a family full circle. So an intervention, which is getting the family ready. It's not done quickly.
correct.
So it's
Done over a period of a couple of meetings. It can be done in a matter of days, but we do have to have meetings to prepare before actually sitting down with the addicted individual. So, and unfortunately, families tend to wait too long.
yes.
So, but yes, I am available. I think my information will be.
Yes, we'll get it up
posted.
there on the
Yes.
website. So the intervention, critical to be done by someone certified. It's not about taking someone and just getting them on a plane and getting them out of here.
Absolutely
It
not.
needs to be done right.
That's right.
Certainly, the certified prevention relapse specialist, I
Yes.
love that.
Yes. I love
Relapse
imparting those skills. Love it.
doesn't have to be part of
It
the
does
disease.
not have to be part of
And if it is
recovery.
part of the disease, part of the
Part of
recovery,
recovery.
doesn't mean you're not in recovery anymore.
That's right. No.
It's just a step, a day in the life of.
Correct.
I like to compare it to really a relapse, of cancer or any other disease, fatal progressive disease, right?
Yes, yes,
We can all, come out of.
absolutely. And we can talk much more about that another time, really
Yeah.
get into relapse prevention if you want to. It's a wonderful process.
I would love to do that
Yeah.
because I think that needs to be discussed.
Sure, I would love to talk
Because,
about that.
we have a lot of, thank God, people in recovery right now.
Yeah, yeah, can
And
benefit
how
from
can
that
we,
information.
how can we
So
help?
let's do that.
Thank you so much,
Sure.
Karen. It was such a pleasure. And thank you for joining us this evening. We'll see you next week. Have a great, blessed weekend.